Nicky, we start with the Super Coppa, which took place in Riyadh, not that close to,
little away from Milan.
Yeah, well, I just thought I'd mention that. You might want to tell us why. But what made you, because I've read your article in The Guardian, and what made you feel that this was a new beginning for Milan from what you saw, apart from them winning, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, the Riyadh thing I can answer very quickly, which is filthy lucre, isn't it? It's the same as anything, it's money. Money is deciding all of these things now, and Serie A is certainly not immune to it. Indeed, I'd say the Ligue is done very poorly compared to the other big European leagues at monetising its product in recent years, and that's a big issue for them. And when someone comes along and throws some money at you, the will to say no to it is very low. So,
and if you needed that underlined, that there are two big leagues in Europe that are just like that. The fact that Italy and Spain are consecutively playing expanded Super Cup formats in Saudi Arabia in this sort of super week of football in Saudi. I mean, it couldn't underline it any more brightly, could it?
Yeah, and it's awful in lots of ways that are more serious than this, but I also find it incredibly frustrating that now you have to talk about all these statistics in terms of in a Supercoppa final. Oh, Lautaro Martinez has scored in the last 3 Supercoppa finals. It wasn't a final before last year. Last year was the first time we had semi-finals. It was just a game. It was just league winner against cup winner, which made sense, by the way. But anyway, the story which you actually want to hear about, I think, and our listeners want to hear about, is, of course, Sérgio Conceição, who, as you just hinted at in the intro, the craziest speed run in I can think of in recent football history, showing up on Monday to replace Paulo Fonseca, which is a whole story in itself, how incredibly badly they mishandled his sacking. But Conceição shows up on the Monday with a fever, on a plane basically immediately to Riyadh with his team.
So to underline, that's not a metaphorical fever.
Oh, no.
That's an actual fever.
Oh, yeah. He was running a temperature. Like the semi-final of the Supercoppa, which for Milan was on Thursday, at that press conference, his eyes were wet and they'd come from a goal down and beaten Juventus. His son's on the books. Juventus didn't play. But so someone was saying, is this emotional for you? And he's like, no, I don't get emotional about this. I have a fever. I was running 39 degrees earlier. So Conceição, no nonsense for the emotions of things. But yeah, shows up on the Monday, like I said, straight off to Riyadh with a fever with his team, running double sessions the day before that Juventus game, which again, even more bonkers when you think this man's sick, he's not well. Is it even that smart for him to be out there with all these players when they can catch it off him? But he's doing it. They come from a goal down in the 70th minute to win that game. And then on the Monday, it's the derby against Inter. Now, Milan did beat Inter earlier this season under Fonseca. It was one of the few bright spots they've had in the league this season. But it turned out to be something of a false dawn. And that's relevant because since, I think, 2011... they hadn't won back-to-back games against Inter. That's how much Inter have dominated this fixture, is that it had been more than a decade since they'd even won consecutive games against them. So all expectations are that Inter's going to win the game. Inter weren't great in the first half, but they were better. And then Lautaro scores on the verge of half-time, as he has in the last 3 Supercoppa finals. And
you're not taking this seriously, are you?
and then Mediterranean scores after half-time. And you think, well, we've seen this before. Inter had won the last 3 Supercoppa. They show up, they're the best team in Italy, they win. And then out of nowhere, you get this transformation sparked by Theo Hernandez scoring a free kick. And Milan were just so compelling in the second half of that game. The whole game was so compelling because Inter had more chances too. But suddenly you came away not only with Milan winning the Supercoppa, which it is treated more seriously than the Community Shield in England. I would say it always has been, but it is still the least of the trophies you can win over there. But nevertheless, Conceição has shown up and he's won a trophy. I think the feeling more than just winning a trophy is, has he shifted the whole narrative? Has he made Milan, who are 8th, 8 points from the top 4, has he made them relevant again? And I think that's the question that is tantalising after that Supercoppa win.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Not just that their performance were compelling, but he's compelling as a personality, even in these early stages. I think that's...
but he's not compelling enough to have changed the outcome of that match on his first day on the job, is he? He's not that compelling.
Well, I think that's the thing, because obviously there's the new manager bounce that we love to talk about. clearly there needed to be some sort of response to the exit of Fonseca. But I think what we're seeing immediately is how different a personality is to Fonseca. Fonseca is like a really good coach and a really reasonable, likeable guy. And I think there's this growing suspicion that maybe that leaves him a little bit short at absolute elite level to...
Well, the nice guy part.
Yeah, to really sort of bring his feelings to bear on a team. And I think particularly when you get the contrast, the light and shade of Conceição taking over. Because, of course, they're going to be compared, the two of them, because they're compatriots, etc.
And friends as well. As I
yes, but the way that Sérgio Conceição just bends stuff to his will, I think is quite interesting. It reminds me of that George Bernard Shaw quote about, the reasonable man fits in with the world, whereas the unreasonable man makes the world fit in with him. Therefore, the world is changed by unreasonable men. And I think if you look at this, there are so many little things, obviously, what Zlatan Ibrahimovic, when he did his chat in the dressing room afterwards, and you think of him as the big dog of Milan, don't you? And he talked about Conceição smashed the TV at halftime in the semi. In the Juventus game, because he was so annoyed, probably a bit ill and feverish as well, at his team's performance so far. I've heard elsewhere people talking about, he's a tactical innovator because he switched it up to 4-4-2. No, that's what he always plays. He has made them his team already. And what he said about Rafael Leao afterwards, and Leao was a big problem really for Fonseca. Leao and Theo Hernandez were obviously big problems for Fonseca. The two most best paid players at Milan, the two stars of the team. And it felt like he was struggling really, Fonseca, to get them on board. And he was employing a bit of carrot and stick to get it to work. It seemed like his relationship with Rafael Leao particularly improved over the last month or so. But Leao has been absolutely waxing lyrical about Conceição. And what he said in response was really interesting to me. He said that Leao could be a phenomenon. He said he can be one of the best in the world. He has so much quality. And if he puts that at the service of the team, he's going to be even better. Okay, so far so bland. And then he says afterwards,
wait for the next bit.
In my opinion, he will be one of the best in the world by the end of this season. So you take either of those two sentences separately, and it sounds like just normal manager speak. But then let's read the whole thing together. He has so much quality, and if he puts that at the service of the team, he's going to be even better. In my opinion, he will be one of the best in the world by the end of the season. Therefore, you will not be able to resist me. You will do exactly what I say, and whether you like it or not, you're going to be one of the best in the world by the end of the season.
As George Bernard Shaw would say, by Jove, I think he's got it. By Jove, I think he's got it. However, where does that leave Milan in the bigger question of their role in Serie A and their big rivalry, of course, with their neighbours or their tenants, or is it vice versa? Either way, with Inter, amongst other things.
Cohabitors,
yeah, because it's shared. I do think, first off, what Andy's just said there cuts to the heart of the question you're asking as well, Dotun, because Milan on paper, the team still looks pretty good to me. It's a little uneven. There's parts of the pitch where you think it looks stronger than other places. But the attack has got quite a lot going now when you consider that, even though the way that last goal happens, you've got Pulisic involved, you've got Leao involved, you've got Tammy Abraham scoring. These are all good enough players. When you've got Theo Hernandez playing like he did in the Supercoppa and scoring the free kick, which turned everything around for them. When you've got in midfield, Reinders, I think, is a really, really quality player. They have got quality through that team. There's no reason that they should be in eighth. And I think that the big question for me, for any new manager coming in, would be, can you tap into Leao and Theo in particular again? Because when they won the league, these were pivotal players. There was already a question of, did Stefano Pioli start to lose these players? I think there was an emphatic suggestion that Fonseca had from the game earlier this season when the two of them refused to participate in a team talk basically and went off for a cooling break on the other side of the pitch. So it's been pretty clear that Fonseca and the two arguably most important influential players at Milan have not been on the same page at all times. So just by showing up and getting Leao and Theo back fully integrated, there's like a really easy gain to make there that's quite big. Whether or not Conceição has all of the tactical answers, has all of the subtle bits, I think that's way too early to say. But what I do think is you really can't downplay the impact of showing up and getting to start like this. In fact, it's odd. At the time, I don't know if I would have thought that it's necessarily a good time to change manager right before the Supercoppa. But actually, Milan's recent history is so defined by their rivalry with Inter. It really is. I think when you look at how it unraveled for Pioli, who won the league for them, and I feel like people forget that Pioli won the league. He then takes them to a Champions League semi-final, which they hadn't been in nearly 2 decades. This should be good. But that Champions League semi-final almost became the most toxic moment of all of it because they got thumped by Inter. If they lost to anyone else, it would have been we got to a Champions League semi-final. But because they lost to Inter and they didn't play well in those 2 legs, you got the whole scene with the fans after the Spezia game in between calling the players under the curva to give them an earful and tell them it wasn't enough, they weren't giving enough effort. It's because it's Inter. And then the next season, they finished second. So again, this is not terrible. They finished second, but they finished second to Inter, who won the league by beating them in the derby and who get to wear the second gold star before they do because they beat them in the derby. Everything comes back to, in my opinion, that rivalry at the moment. So when you show up and in your first week in the job, you do the things that fans like anyway. You present yourself as this ass kicker who'll make them work harder, do double sessions before we play Juventus, right? That's already like good. Fans love that stuff. Come on, let's not kid ourselves. Fans love that. But you do that, and then you beat Juventus, and then you beat Inter. And
then you dance around the dressing room with a cigar.
Right. Yeah. Like
it's a massive big deal, and it's a moment.
You could not have done more to put yourself in the environment and like in the law, frankly, of this fixture. This will be one of those moments in the derby law forever. Conceição and his cigar in the Supercoppa. So you can't start better than this. What I would say is, if you take a step back, Fonseca delivered some good results in big games. He did beat Inter in the league. He beat Real Madrid. What he didn't do is beat the teams you're supposed to beat every week in the league. And that's what Conceição has to do now. He has to show up and, I mean, he said it himself after the game, from tomorrow we think about Cagliari. He has to beat the Cagliaris. He has to go on and start winning games that Milan should just be winning as a matter of course.
I guess that's the thing. Like, the club really needed this. The people who run the club really needed this because they've been under absolutely massive pressure. There's been lots of talk about the Americanization of Milan, and it's been pretty personal. And as Nicky said, the way that they fired Fonseca, that he broke it out the car window out the window of his car on the way out of the stadium before the club did.
Like 40 minutes after giving a press conference at the end of the game in which he talked about the Supercoppa.
He clearly had no idea about it when everyone else inside the club knew he was going before this game against Roma at Christmas, or just after Christmas. So the way that they've handled it is so poor. And for those Milan fans who've been getting on at the club and unhappy about the direction of the club compared to what they feel the ethos of the club should be, the way that they fired Fonseca, or the poor way that they handled it, is really just more grist to their mill, really. So for Conceição to come in and say, actually, we're past that, that's massively important for the board, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the board is a whole story in itself that's super interesting. Ibrahimovic, of course, as we know, loves to present himself as the alpha in any situation, and I think the way everything went with Fonseca really hasn't done good things for his reputation. And so, as Andy's saying, big bounce back for them. The other thing, I'm framing this about the fans, what they want. I actually think like the whole cigar moment. Conceição said afterwards the players wanted him to do it, and I believe him. I think that was the thing the players wanted him to do. I think
because of his previous celebration.
Yeah. It was
That's right, when Porto won the league.
Yeah. I think maybe it matters as well. I think maybe it matters that he's had an opportunity to connect with his players, like make a meaningful bond with them right away and like have that moment. Because now, you said it just a second ago, Andy, that phrase, like, in this together, like now him and the players are in this together, like we're doing this together, like, and I think that
what difference will it
isn't
make?
easy to do, like joining a club mid-season necessarily.
What difference will it make though? Because clearly at some point, after you've beaten Inter and you've beaten a few of the other minor teams, the question is, are you back to the glory days with Milan?
To me, it comes back to what I said before. I need to see Leao playing like Leao. I need to see Theo playing like Theo. They haven't all season. If they play at their levels, I think there's already enough else that's good in that team. I think Pulisic's been brilliant this season. I think Reinders has been good this season. The defence has got a lot of questions for me, but if your attack is as good as it can be, then I think they should be a lot better than where they are.